Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. So in this video I'd like to give you a quick tour of the garden just to show you the damage caused by Storm Babet. So this is here in the front garden. So these are my two laburnum trees. They're only about 2 years in the ground and they're still not fully rooted in securely, but they are staked and they actually did okay. We had 50 to 60 mile an hour winds here, but the problem was we had our winds from the southeast. And we don't normally get winds from the southeast, so a lot of the plants weren't used to it, and also the way my garden's positioned gets really badly hit by the southeast winds. So the front garden here isn't too bad, but you can see I'm in a terrace here, and there's two long terraces and then there's a gap. What happens is if the wind comes from the southeast, most of the wind gets blocked by the house there, but it all gets channeled down that gap, and you'll see in the back garden it's a real wind tunnel and it's really hit the tropical bed quite bad. So the laburnums have survived without too much damage. They are a little bit loose with the roots. You can see when I rock it there, there's now quite a bit of movement, so that's a little bit concerning. We've obviously had some root damage, and it's the same with the one around this side as well. It's a lot looser than it used to be. This one's not as bad as the other tree, but there's quite a bit of movement, so we've definitely had a bit of damage there. Most of my dahlias have come through not too badly. You can see there's a few broken flowers on the ground. This one's lost a broken stem. This one did get hit really quite bad, and this has lost pretty much all its flowers, unfortunately. That was the tallest one, and this one here has lost one or two, but it's not too bad. So generally not too much damage in the front garden. There is my Cordyline, unfortunately, which has been completely snapped over. Now I'm not too surprised about this, because what happened is we had a really hard winter last winter and the outer stem got frozen and killed. So what happened is it started to rot at the base, but it was still growing fine, because what's happened is the central section is still alive, and that's the bit where all the water and food gets transferred through the plant. So that's why this has still been growing healthily and has been looking quite good all summer. But the outer section, which grows and thickens the stem and provides the structural support, hasn't been able to thicken any further, and has in fact got thinner because it's rotted away, so it's snapped off, and that's why there's all those new shoots coming up from the root system. And I knew it was going to happen at some point, so I'm not too surprised about that. And what I'm going to have to do is cut back a lot of these new shoots and just leave one and let one just come up healthy as a single stem, instead of a kind of like a cluster of plants. So I've lost the main stem, but at least I haven't lost the plant. When it comes to my sunflowers, these are actually all quite well protected. The wind was coming from behind me straight towards the house, so they didn't get too much wind. Also, I keep them really well staked. You can see actually my ensetis here, they're pretty much fine. There's a little bit of damage to the leaves, but they're not too bad. They're quite wind resistant anyway, and being next to that wall, they're protected. I did have my big sunflower here, which is quite exposed, and this one, the smaller one over there, was extremely exposed, but because I've staked them really well, they haven't really had any major damage. So you can see a video about how to stake them, where I've talked about them previously. So I'll now take you to the back garden. So the back garden is between the terrace houses, so this is a real wind tunnel. It gets funneled down here, and this is where most of the damage has occurred, unfortunately. Now normally this garden is quite well protected from the wind, but if I get it from this direction, I get really bad wind damage. So I have managed to keep it protected with the house, the shed there, some trees at the back, and a large hedge. But as I say, there's this one direction, the wind comes, it really does funnel through, and it actually concentrates the wind and makes it even more damaging. So it's probably about 50-60 mile an hour gusts were blasting through here. I've got some videos. I did get windier than when I was filming, but that was later at night, so I wasn't able to film. But you can see here, everything's windswept. You can see all my begonia grandes here. I swept to the side. You can see the underneath of the leaves. You should normally be seeing green, not purple. And that really shows you how the wind was just coming from that one direction and blowing everything that way. We've got some shredded leaves on my banana trees. My paulownia has also been stripped of all its leaves, although at this time of year it was starting to lose its leaves anyway, so that's not really a big deal. It won't really make much damage to that. And same with most of the plants in this bed. It's coming towards the end of the season. We could have had a frost by now anyway, so it's not any major damage that if the top half of these get damaged. But the gingers are fine. They actually come through with no problem. As I say, the main thing is the bananas. The ensetis, again, they're not really too badly damaged. They're pretty tough. Bananas are completely shredded, but it's more of a cosmetic thing. Doesn't affect them too badly otherwise. It just looks a bit unsightly. The leaves are still alive, they're just very shredded. But the thing that was really badly affected was over in this corner. So one of my shoe flies got blown over, but this is an annual, so not too worried about that. But probably one of the biggest disappointments was that I had my two tree dahlias toppled over. So you can see one down here lying completely flat. This one has got some of its roots still attached, so what I'm going to do is dig this up and I'm going to try and save some of the tubers from this one. The one at the back completely snapped off, and I'll show you a closer look up at it here. You can see down there, that's the main stem. It's been completely snapped at the base, so at least the tubers are fine underground. So I'm just going to insulate that, or maybe dig it up and protect some of the tubers, and I can use that for plants next year. You can see there where the stem is snapped. But the other one, what I'm planning to do is dig it up with some tubers that are attached to the stem, and I'm going to try and keep some of the height this year, because normally I just grow it from tubers or stem cuttings, but this year I'm going to try and keep one alive from the stem and see if I can get a bit of extra height and maybe even get flowering one year. So other damage in the garden, we lost some sunflowers on this end. So this isn't normally too windy here, so I didn't actually stake them quite as well as my plants at the front, but you can see I've lost one sunflower. The other ones have survived, so not too much damage for the sunflowers. A lot of plants have kind of been toppled over. Bamboos are fine even though they've toppled, not any major damage. We've lost one or two leaves on some plants, and you can see my gunner over there is looking a bit limp. It's not too happy, it's been a bit damaged, but again, it's the end of the year, the leaves will die off anyway, so I'm not too worried. And then my nice big rhododendron has fallen over as well, which is surprising because it's really well sheltered by that hedge behind it. The hedge is slightly taller than the rhododendron, and it's in a really heavy pot. So I've had really bad storms before, and this has never fallen over. But I don't think there's any major damage. What I'll do now is I'll stand it upright and double check. Hopefully we haven't got anything too damaged on it. So that's the rhododendron back up. There's a little bit of damage on the leaves, but it looks like most of the stems haven't snapped, so that's good. At least that rhododendron is still looking mostly undamaged. So that's about it for the garden. I'll show you quickly the bamboo section, which is round towards the back. But generally bamboo doesn't get badly affected by wind, even though this is one of the windiest spots in the garden because the wind funnels right through between the sheds and the houses. The bamboo generally copes quite well with the wind. So here are the bamboos. No obvious damage that I can see yet. We have got one that's fallen over, but that one's in a pot, so that's not too surprising. And falling over in a pot with bamboo, it shouldn't really cause much damage. The stems are quite robust and the leaves are quite robust, so that toppling over shouldn't cause any damage. It's not like the woody stems of the rhododendron. I did have some new stems coming up which were damaged previously with the wind, but I think two have survived actually that storm quite well. So these two are still growing, so that's quite good. We do have some other ones that have been snapped. You can see this one's been snapped off by the wind, but otherwise it's looking pretty good. And there's a third one actually that's been snapped, you can see there, but the two main stems that were coming up, they're still quite good. So that's all the update for this. Just a very quick update to show you the damage from Storm Babet. Luckily it hasn't actually been too bad. It's the same about the tree dahlias here, because if I keep them for long enough there's a chance that they could flower in the autumn. But the rest of the plants, they're going to get killed by the frost soon anyway. It's now late October, so all in all not too much damage. I think the biggest disappointment probably the cordyline being snapped, but again I was expecting that to happen with that frost damage to the stem. So that's all for this video. I'll see you guys later in the year when I start putting this tropical bed back to sleep.